Hey my friends, today I want to share a little bit about land stewardship and our connection to the plants and the medicine that we want to work with. We're going to dive a little deeper into how do we connect with the plants around us and how do we make sure that we are being responsible and being good stewards of the land. There's many different ways to look at this, but the first one is really a philosophical way. And what I really want to get to this place of is this kind of deeper awareness and understanding that's behind the message, which is the fact that all life is sentient, right? All beings have a sense to them. And so when we go out and we work with plant medicine, we want to make sure that we're also working with an awareness that we are treading on their territory and we're building relationships, just like we might do with a person, like we might do with an animal. We're building relationships with these plants, and we are responsible once we take their lives, once we ask for their medicine, we are then responsible to be good stewards to them. So this is kind of a philosophical way of approaching this, but this will overlap to everything we do when it comes to harvesting wild plants. So let's take an example or a couple of more tangible steps here. The first one is, how do we tread when we're in the nature? Do we tread lightly? Or do we slow down? Do we quiet our spirit? If you notice, when you get out into the world, things are a little quieter, right? They're not like they are in our urban settings. You know, in our urban settings, things are loud, noise is coming at us. The media is talking and speaking at us in so many different ways. We're jumping from one thing to the next. When we get into the natural world, do we slow down our rhythm? Do we tread lightly? Are we quiet in nature? Or do the plants hear us coming from miles and miles away? If we want to work with plant medicine, it's important for us to recognize that the spirit of the plant is as much or more of the medicine than just the physical body of the plant. Just like a human, you can take off a hand and yet the hand's not going to open the door, is it? If you take off just the hand, Or you can say, oh, well, the lips are what make the human work. So you take the lips off and yet all of that great creative ideas that the lips were talking about before don't work anymore. So when we take the plants, when we work with plant medicine, how do we bring the spirit of the plant with us? So the first one is quieting ourselves down. The next one is taking time in active appreciation. So are we appreciative of the medicine? Are we appreciative of the place that this medicine's coming from? Are we appreciative of the plant that we're asking to come home with us? Are we appreciative of ourselves as being medicine carriers? That we're actually acknowledging the fact that here we are as a bridge supporting health in its many different forms. And we're asking this plant as medicine to come with us to support this type of health. So that's the first one, or the second one maybe, is to acknowledge that aspect of appreciation, an active appreciation. The next one, which comes from all different medicine paths, every folkloric tradition, every indigenous culture, is the one of reverence and thankfulness, right? So are we reverent and thankful? And this doesn't have to be the traditional native offering of giving tobacco, which is very much a worthy way to go about this, but how are we giving reverence? How are we giving thanks to these plants? How are we honoring their spirit and asking them to come home with us in that way? And so I've talked about before leaving a little hair, or I've talked about before using our spit, leaving a fingernail, digging into the dirt, holding the plant, singing a song, sharing a moment, writing it down. Often I'll bring my little journal with me, and I'll just sit there with the plant for a minute and think about it. Think about what comes up for me. Spend some time in the, as we call, the imaginal realm with the plant. So that's the next one, is that active appreciation going into gratitude. So we move into gratitude from a place of gratitude and thankfulness. Then we can start to engage with the spirit of the plant. All right, so we're talking a little bit about stewardship and wild harvesting ethics. And really, something else I want to kind of bring back into focus is this. There's a concept that comes out of actually a term called set and setting, is creating the right set and creating the right setting. So we want to be set in our minds, right? And we can slow that down and bring it down to the right space. And we also want to have the right setting to be able to harvest the plants in. So is it the right time of day? Is it the right environment? Is it the right season? All these things come into play. But the set in our mind is where we're going to focus on right now. And that is, how do we get the right mindset? So I've talked a little bit about slowing down and our rhythm. The other thing to acknowledge is that we come as a society out of this urbanized infrastructure. And what that means, to the mind is that there's a little bit of entitlement. We come with a little bit of entitlement and a lack of connection from the natural world. So we want to be building that up as we set ourselves out for creating a wild harvesting experience and or a way of coming about working with plant medicine. So in that setting up, part of the thing to acknowledge is the fact that when we come to the forest is not just our playground, right? It's not just a place where we can come and take the way we might go to a grocery store and we start, give a bit of money, buy whatever we want, comes from wherever in the world. We have no connection to those things and where they come from. If we're gonna make medicine and we're gonna work with plants, then the entire story becomes important all the way along, not just where the food or the medicine comes from, but the whole process, which means we've got to get fully present. And so when we're setting ourselves up for it, it's okay, if I'm going to harvest this plant, I'm going to take some time to think about it. I'm going to find out where it grows, best ideal times, some of the values to it, when of the year I want to harvest it. So I'm setting myself up for it. I'm going to slow my rhythm down, get ready and get present in the forest. And then I'm going to have enough time afterwards to fully finish the harvest, finish the processing, bring it to a place where I can leave it as a powerful medicine. When you set yourself up for success, when you set yourself up with gratitude, you create abundance, you create healing. And that act of setting up and preparing is half of the healing energy that comes from crafting plant medicine. It's actually building yourself into a way of showing up in the world that you're bringing healing energy with you. So when you touch and work with these plants, they know and feel that, right? Know that plants have more energy, more genetic intuition put towards sensory perception than humans do. They are sensing the world all the time. They have lots of energy invested into sensing the relationship with other animals, with plants, with their neighbors than we do. So therefore, when we approach them from that place, we actually create this kind of relationship dynamic where there's an appreciation and a willingness to work with us on that medicine path. The more time that we spend with plants, working with them and harvesting them, the more we become stewards of the land. That's something else that we kind of need to glean out of this experience and this relationship, is that the two ways medicine works is one is in creating health when we work with it, and the other one is in creating health when we get out into the forest. So even just the act of getting into the forest slows down and calms down our nervous system, right? Forest bathing is something that comes out of Japanese culture as a way to calm down the body and get more into the flow of the natural world of ourselves, calm down heart palpitations, calm down our spirit, bring us back into connection with plants. So we can't help but start to want to become good stewards. And being a good steward is really about the practice, right? So the practice is one of diligence, it's one of steadiness, it's one of connectedness. And so when we approach a new place to harvest, we want to take a little note, a few things. And some of the first things are, who else is using this land? Is there another wild harvester there? Is there other people who are using it for walking, for biking, for dog training, for connecting with the land? Who else is using this land? The other one is, what other animals live here? And what animals rely on these plants? What insects rely on these plants? What plant relationships are built between multi-species? Is there other plants in the environment that if we were to take this out, we're going to suffer, we're going to be affected? When we approach a plant or a plant community, the first thing to note is, how healthy are the plants? Are the plants healthy? Is there insects on them? Is there some curling of the leaves or yellowing of the tips? Is the plant community healthy? If the answer is yes, the next thing to note is, how much of them are there? Is there plants further out, closer in? How dense is that community? Is that community a healthy community? Is there a lot of them? If there's more than 10, the rule kind of goes, we can take one. If there's hundreds of them, possibly we can start to take a few of them. So that's kind of one of the rules, and I won't set that in stone because every plant is different and each plant deserves its own kind of relationship built with it, one of active communication and thoughtfulness. But really 1 in 10 is a good ideal, as well as healthy plant communities only, and the right time of year, the right time of life. Remember that plants are, like us, in the right moments, they can be amazing, right? They can have amazing potential. Their energy goes in the right direction. So if the community of plants is healthy and abundant, we can take the 1 in 10, but we can also start to look to build the right relationship with the whole community, which means active stewardship. So if we're going to take some of these plants, can we replant some? Making sure we're putting down the soil again. If these plants we're disrupting them and taking the roots, are we replanting the soil? Are we making sure that it looks like we were never there? Are we letting the plants go to seed? Now, this doesn't always work for biannuals, where we actually need to harvest the root of the first year. But for any plant that we can allow it to go to seed, can we let it go to seed first? Or can we take some of those fully mature seeds and plant them out as we go along? How can we be active participants in creating a healthier ecosystem when we leave it? I think that's one of the main missions of a good wild harvesting relationship, is to actually create an active relationship towards where we're making it a better patch to work from. Because we know, and we learn this, that if we harvest everything, there will be nothing left. And that's the way our planet's going. Right now, many of our wild plants are suffering because they don't have the opportunity to grow into new areas, or their old areas are being taken up by urban development, or wild harvesters are learning about them and harvesting too much. So it's important for us to become good stewards of our patch. Part of this active appreciation is coming into flow, right? Being in flow state when we're in nature. And this is really where magic happens, is that state of flow where we're not really thinking about it, but our intuition is growing and building the experience into a powerful, impactful one. So harvesting plants is a powerful experience. You are working with a really deep-seated ancestral energy. There's a memory around how the body has been sustained for thousands of generations from the act of harvesting, from the act of wild plant communication and connection. So you tap into that. And when you tap into that at a fully set and ready level, the flow state occurs, right? And this is a big piece that I've found for myself around why I love wild harvesting. I know that I can't wild harvest unless I have good active stewardship and I'm taking care of those patches. I've seen places, for example, I did a video on nettles, and it's in a spot where it's very easy for people to know where that spot is if they live in my community. I've gone back there every year to that same place, and it's just been pummeled by people keen to pick wild nettles. Nothing right, nothing wrong with this. These people are excited to learn how to pick these nettles and to work with them. But when the nettle patch, every single nettle is harvested, there's a very hard chance for those roots. It's a rhizome, so it has the ability to grow back up again and hold chi or energy in the roots, but it takes a lot of inertia for that nettle patch to keep putting out these nettles without ever getting a chance to go to seed, right? Without ever getting a chance to fully mature. So as a good wild harvester, it's about sustainability and about replanting, regrowing. In the case of nettles, we might take one of the root rhizomes that we find from a really dense spot and move it a little further into the forest. Yes, we can take it home and try to grow it in the right environment, but it's also almost better to move it into the same environment it's in, but just a little further into the forest and help cultivate it that way and grow it out that way. With wild harvesting, one of the other ethical things to note and to think about is it okay to work with this land? At Current, there are a lot of different parks and government safety stewarded lands that it's not okay to wild harvest in. We can't just go into any park and harvest anything we want. Some of these plants are protected. So to be careful about that, as well as if we want to work on private land, is it allowed? Is it accessible? Is it something we've asked about? Yes, no, maybe so. I'm only taking a little bit. It's only for me. Where does our moral dilemma / ethics fit into place? Are we valuing all stakeholders involved, all people, all plants, all life that's choosing to come with us in our medicine? Like, is that part of our equation? And if it is, and we got the yes check mark, then we can start to go about doing that harvesting. People have been on this land now for, I'd say at least the Western culture has been kind of curating a way of showing up on the land for 3 centuries. And there's some problematic approaches that we've occurred in the last 3 centuries. And some of those are creating polluted environments. Some of those are different kinds of waste, different types of things. Like I live in a town called Cumberland, and in the mountains here, in the side of the town, there was a whole area where it was mining, right? So certain plants are quite a bit more impacted by all that disturbed coal and all the pollutants that came along with also the mining camps and the things they put in the land. So I have to be careful where we harvest, because we don't want to just go out and harvest a plant that might be leaching and bioremediating toxins. This is also really common around roadways. Anything within a couple of, even within like 300 meters of a road is still leaching out toxins from the tar from the building of the road. So we want to get off the beaten path, so to speak. Another common thing is people tread in really close to society lands. Are we like right near a farm? Are we right near something that's got all kinds of watershed issues? So there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to choosing where to harvest ethically, responsibly, and being good stewards of the land. So these are just a few ideas for you to think about as you get out and start harvesting plants, and know that it's amazing to collect and connect with wild medicines, but it's only amazing if you're doing this with active appreciation, gratitude, and good stewardship. Otherwise, there's a part of you that's fooling itself, and there's a part of you that is not allowing for the full appreciation and the full medicine to really blossom into the most beautiful medicine path it can be. Because when we're replanting these plants, when we're actively appreciating them, when we're harvesting them in the right time of year, in the right environment, from places where it's ethical for us to do so and it's clean, wow, that medicine is amazing. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking out this video, taking the time to connect with this type of information. We'll see you next time, all right, friends?